Tarry here, where the stories never grow old, and you hear something new every time they are told, and it comes clear. So tarry here, where it doesn't matter your age, and when we gather round the table, we all take the stage year after year. So tarry here.
Welcome to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stassi Okowski.
It is amazing that we still are who we say we are.
Yeah.
Today is Monday, February 16th, and our theme today is recent adventures.
I love what you said. We still are who we think we are.
Well, sometimes I wonder.
Things
happen.
And
You get
yes,
gobsmacked, and then you wonder what
that's right.
happened to that person who was.
I keep waiting. I just recently I said something about I was facing a mirror, and I was talking to someone about what I was doing, and
Were
I
you
said,
talking to yourself?
"Well, I was in a sense, but I was telling someone about. I said, and I had to be facing the mirror because of the activity I was doing. I said, this what I'm doing would be a lot easier if I had a more pleasant face to look at, because I'm in front of this mirror." And it was, it was true, because I was staring at myself. And so what I thought of, we took a little break, and we were doing a thing. And then I thought, you know what? I look so much like my brother, Tony. And, and he's gone. But I thought that when I have to go back in front of that mirror, I'm gonna look at Tony, because I spent a lot of time looking at my brother Tony, especially in the year before, last year before he died. So anyway, and it really worked. It really, really did. It wasn't
You were
me.
thinking, what a handsome man.
I was thinking, man, Tony looks good.
That's a great story.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Speak coming up. And you should thank Andy Offit Irwin, because you do that well.
Thank
so
you,
well.
Andy Offit Irwin, for opening our show with your original composition, Tarry Here. And I hear that the competition for other story events, wanting to have that as their own, is increasing. So we appreciate that you're still allowing us to use it. I know we're not the biggest or the best.
Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. Who said we're not the biggest and the best?
Well, there's only two of us.
I know. Oh, but we are a connection back to 9 years.
At least.
2017, and longer for you.
Yeah, 2014 for me.
There you go. Look at that. And okay, so I'm going to say
2015. Okay.
Something about Speak. I didn't get to join in Speak in February, because of the time difference, and things come up, and sometimes the time difference, especially for an evening thing, interferes with stuff like dinner.
And we can't interfere with dinner.
Well, sometimes it's difficult, because, anyway, this 2-hour time difference drives me crazy sometimes, because I have to remember, I call my daughter every day, and I have to remember that, I can't call her at 10:30 in the evening, because it's after midnight there. Anyway, I couldn't join, at the broadcast. But because I'm a seasoned ticket owner, I could see the recording. So the next day, I got the thing for the recording, and I sat down and watched the recording. And every show, I always write to Adam and tell him what I thought about the show, and it's always positive. But and I tell him what I thought was unique about it, or if it was anything that caught my eye. And we always exchange uh, information about it, and he always appreciates it. So, but I wrote to him. I said, Adam, I really enjoyed the woman's performance, but I didn't understand. Did she do that twice? And when it was recorded, there was no audience? And he wrote back and said, Stash, I'm a little confused about her, you know. So I wrote and until I explained exactly. And then he came back and he said, I understand now what happened. He said, they're in a new place in the Bird Center,
Uh-huh.
BYRD,
Yeah,
not
they've been there
BIRD.
before, but not for a really long time.
And this is their permanent home now.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Right. They're going to be every performance there. And he said, we did not have a mic in the audience. The audience was not mic'd. And I'm not kidding you, Fanny. This lady did it. Did you see it?
No, I missed it. I still have the recording, I think.
Well, yeah, recording is good up until sometime this next week, the 25th, I think.
Okay.
Well, and this is no lie. I'm watching it. The lady was funny and interesting. And I'm thinking, I don't hear a sound. She's telling stuff and she's saying things that are pretty kind of intimate, you know? And stuff that people would go, or so. I don't hear a word. So I check my sound and she's perfect. And I'm thinking, even took off I was using my headphones. I took or my new AirPods. I thought maybe they're not working, but they got to be working. I hear her, but there was not a single audience sound.
How disconcerting.
It was because she was very funny at times. I mean, she was really funny at times,
Yeah.
and interesting. And she said a couple of things that made me go, "Ooh." I mean, she said a couple of things that were like bawdy, and I was even shocked at it. And so I thought, well, maybe they had her do her show, for the recording. But no, Adam explained to me they did not have the audience mic, but during their live performance, you could hear all that stuff. So, I told him, I thought that was a little bit disconcerting, because she was very funny. She said some things that were outrageously funny, and talked about family and stuff, and her grandmother and all this stuff. What Anyway, I don't know how that works. That her mic didn't pick up even a sound from the audience. So if you watched it, I would like to hear from what you think of it. Because
okay, and you should tell our audience that was a VJ.
Oh
Megan,
yeah,
right.
Well, right.
Am I pronouncing her name correctly?
Oh yeah, and that was one of the funny things because her name. She went through a thing about her name. And it was. I mean, to take a name that simple, in my brain, VJ is VJ. But she's talked about how the way people called her and what they called her. And
I can just imagine.
And especially like her grandmother.
Oh.
Her grandmother pronounced it differently, and so it confused people sometimes when her grandmother was around when she was talking. Anyway, it was very good. But coming out up. She was number one on the list for Speak this year. Coming up is going to be Laura Sims, and
Yeah.
she is one of the grand storytellers. She's been around a good while.
I have shared the stage with her. Well, not at the same time, but she has performed at the National Women's Storytelling Festival when I was a performer there. So twice.
Right.
That was fun.
And she's coming up on the March 10th.
Same as this.
At the Bird Center, 7:30 p.m. That's a Tuesday. And everybody should check with Speak Story Series about details, because the Bird Center is their new home, and it's going to be their home all year for all the performances. Except Adam has added a wrinkle. There are going to be some special home storytellings. There are 3. If anyone's interested, check at speakstoryseries.com. The first one is going to be coming up soon with Kim Whitecamp.
I saw that.
And this is going to be a special thing and a very limited number of seats, because it's going to be performed in someone's house. And Adam has 3 of those scheduled for this year.
Wow, I didn't know there were so many.
Yeah, it's going to be, and it's different. And our tickets for the season don't cover that. Our tickets for the season cover the performances at the Bird Center monthly.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, so, and that's new. That's kind of a neat thing. I know I've done a few and hosted a couple of those, even, home storytellings. And it is a real nice thing, much more intimate, and tends to be a longer experience, both because you have time added before and after, generally, with something like that, where the people arrive and they're talking and sharing things, and storyteller introduces himself and then does his program or her program. And then afterwards, it doesn't just disperse like it does in an auditorium or a theater. People tend to hang around for a while, engage more with the storyteller and with each other. So anyway.
Well, I can also claim Kim Whitecamp, because I've told at festivals with her too. So
yeah,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I did also once.
She does get around.
Yes, I'll be darned. You're right. So, and let's see. I think we're caught up on stuff.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So you should tell us a story.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell mostly about Saturday, 2 days ago. I have performed here at our facility where I am a resident. My wife and I are residents here. And we have about 100 people living in this marvelous building. It's a 4-story building, and it is kind of like living in a very nice, fancy hotel. And we have lots of activities here. Our meal, Terry loves it. She does no cooking. The only reason we use any kind of devices that you would use heat on a stove or something like that is, and we don't even use a stove. In fact, we have our stove we have a kitchen, and our stove is used to store things in. Our dishwasher is used to store things in. So Terry hasn't fixed a meal since the first week of September, when we were still living in Martinsburg. but we get 3 meals a day at specific times. You know, 7:30 in the morning for breakfast, and then 11:30 for lunch, and then 5 for dinner. And those times go for an hour and a half. So, and just it's open seating, of course. And we have a wonderful wait staff, mostly young, very young, not all of them, but mostly young, a lot of young women that are on the wait staff, and very polite, everything. And but we can also eat all day long because we're on the radio this morning, and because the time difference is 2 hours here. It's now 8:25 here, and I haven't had breakfast. And after the show, which will end somewhere around 9 o'clock, and maybe actually about 10 after 9, breakfast will be over officially. However, I can just stroll downstairs, sit at one of the tables, and someone will come up and ask me what I would like, and I can order breakfast. It and there is a variety of things I can order. I don't have to order the special of the day or anything like that, and that is true all day long. For a while, Terry and I were eating breakfast at 10 o'clock, and we would be the only two people uh, in the dining area, and because we're eating 2 meals a day basically. But for the last month or so, we go to breakfast. We go to what we call our first meal of the day at 11:30, and that's lunchtime. So, but we can still have, an omelet if we want. We still have a whole variety of things. Um, the other thing is there is a dessert at every meal.
Except breakfast.
No, if we go to breakfast, there is a dessert at breakfast every meal. And I go 2 meals. I eat 2 meals a day, lunch and dinner, and I have a dessert after every meal. And people, a few people I've talked to about this are amazed. I have actually lost weight here, and I'm unique in that because everybody says, especially when you're new here, people always gain weight. It's like I have lost 10 pounds since we moved here, and that happened quickly. And for the last 3 months, I've been maintaining it. I this morning I weighed 178 pounds. That's a weight I had when I was young.
Well, tell us about your adventure, your big adventure.
Okay, well, it involves this place. Okay, since I've been here, I have done 3 storytelling performances and had wonderful reception for all 3. I've been very pleased because I thought I was retired. And then when I got here, they found, I mentioned I had told stories and stuff, and the woman who schedules activities said, "So when are you gonna tell?" And 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 so I did, you know, and I've done 3 stories, and one spaced out like one every 6 weeks or so. Um, Halloween, Christmas, and then I did a science story in January. And it dawned on me, we have a lot of activities here. There's a movie night. There are people have lots of meetings where they discuss things. They discuss politics, all kind of stuff. And but I thought, I wonder how a play would go over here. So I went to the activities director and I asked her, and she said, "You could do that?" I said, "Oh, yes, I can do that." All I have to do is find someone that, would do a 2-person play to do it with me. And so I did. I looked around And one lady that I met showed it some interest in it, but she didn't like the script. She said it wasn't her, favorite kind of thing. She loved reading and everything. She had never done any theater. And I met another lovely lady with a Greek background. She was very nice. And so we began rehearsing. She read the script and liked it. And this past Saturday, on Valentine's Day, we performed Love Letters.
Oh.
And it was a very good experience. And the nice thing about this place is, whenever I've done theater over the years, if it's in a regular theater with a regular company, there are a lot of people to help out. There's somebody for the set, there's somebody takes care of sound, somebody does lights, all that kind of stuff. Like here, to perform something, to do any of the storytelling, it's done in the activity room. The activity room will hold, if you squeeze, it would hold 60 people. That's the number I came up with. If you squeezed, I mean, you have to have people, knocking knees and stuff like that. And the room has no stage. It has no special lighting. It has just a double doorway for entry on the long side of the room. It's a rectangle, and it was interesting. The first time I told the story in that room, I told the story and I was standing with my back to the door that you can enter the room in, and people came in a little bit late, and that was shocking. First of all, because the people came in a little bit late, and then it dawned on me, the average age here is probably 83 to 88. There were a couple of people in their 70s, one of them being Terry. But there are a lot of people. I've been in groups, sat down at a table and had lunch with 5 other people, and found out that I was not even the oldest person in that group, which is sometimes has been a shock to me. But anyway, having people come in, it would be like almost like being on stage and having somebody come in through the curtain and walk by you to go and sit down in the audience. But so after that, I decided I'm always going to, if I perform in that room, I will stand on the opposite side at a wall, and I'll be looking at the doorway. And, anyway, but a room, not a stage, no set at all. So I had to find 2 desks or 2 tables that would be appropriate. Well, the tables we eat on in this place have a stone composition top. They're like granite. They
You
are
have to move those?
they're extremely heavy. Terry took over being like my I don't know what you call it anymore. Terry said, "Don't worry about the tables. I'll figure out a way to get 2 tables in there that are small enough to be kind of like a desk, and but big enough that you can put stuff on the table." No. She corralled a guy, and we've met a lot of people. She talked to this guy who she heard him mention something about. He had worked in a theater doing stuff. On Saturday morning, Terry and Dan got a couple of friends of his there. They moved 2 tables into the activity room. We had to get permission from the person who runs the food service, because those tables came from the atrium where we sit down to eat. And we have many different size tables. There are tables for 2 people, tables for 4 people, tables for 6 people, and sometimes they'll put an extra table together and they can have 10 people around, alongside. Anyway, so that's an unusual thing to do a play where you have somebody has to move furniture and it's not even a stage. And the other thing is we had to wear body mics. And I bet you could guess why we had to wear body mics in a room where, in a room where I can speak to 40 people. I don't need a mic. But the reason I would need a mic here is there are a lot of people who don't hear well. A lot of people with hearing aids and everything. So the activity director told me I only have one body mic for the sound system. Unfortunately, fortunately, there is a man here named Ron who happens to have great experience in theater and who owns a sound system, including body mics. And when I mentioned to him, he said, "Oh, the activities director already spoke to me. I'm going to take care of the sound. Don't worry about it. When you're ready to work with the sound, just give me a call." Okay. So he took care of the sound and everything. So, and that was nice. But it was interesting to be in the room. We had between 35 and 40 people for this performance. And that it was kind of like performing at the a Unitarian Universalist church in Hagerstown. It was that size audience. And when we've done things there when you and I have done things together, and alone when we were storytelling, their audiences there were very nice. The audience we had was, I counted 39 people at one time, but of course, we took a break in between and said we'll be back in 5 minutes. But
you had more than 60 attendees when all your students came.
Oh, I know.
Stories in the round.
I know.
You were one of the big sellers.
And I enjoyed that at a smaller place where it's kind of packed. But the experience here with hearing is such a problem that when we tested one Saturday, when we tested the sound, I felt like I was saying hi, at that level. And pretty much that was the way. So one of the things that Amy, who was my lead lady, what we had to do when we rehearsed, because we didn't rehearse with microphones. We rehearsed, in a small area. And we had to really pay attention, as you know, because you have done the show. Some of the conversation, even though they're in letters, some of the letters that you're reading are intimate letters. They're kind of quiet discussion things or comments, and so, but that was a challenge to modulate the loudness of the voice. But one of the nice thing is there are a few people I've met here who are very nice in doing things like this. One of the men that I've gotten to know, and in fact, one of the guys who plays poker with us, sat off to my right in the audience, and by the time we had spoken for about 4 or 5 minutes, I would glance up now and then at the audience, and here over on that side, he had raised up his thumb, and I knew what that meant. He meant that he could hear. which is good because he's one of the poker players. And even at our poker table, we have to remember to speak up, even though we're 2 or 3 feet away from each other, 5 feet maybe at the table, um, because some of the guys who play um, they wear hearing aids and they have to adjust it and all that stuff. Anyway, um, so I was impressed with the audience we had. They liked the show. We had a, a, better response than I've had in a couple of other places. Not at yours. Your stories in the round. We did that. We had a great response there when we did that. Part of that, I think, is because they love you to pieces. You know.
They enjoyed you very, very much, and they
Oh,
came to all your sessions.
yeah. I felt like that. I would believe me. I would love to do something and look up and see your people there because they were always very welcoming. But that I felt that for both Amy and I, and she was very pleased at it because she was kind of nervous. She hadn't done much in the way of performing, um, but she was very pleased, and so we had a very good audience. A lot of people afterwards stopped up, came up to us, and told us, what how much they enjoy it, and we did that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So by supper time, we had gotten nice feedback, and there were a number of people came and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry I missed your show because everybody's talking about it and everything. Are you going to do it again?" Now this is the one-time thing here, and maybe we'll do another show. Afterwards, in the evening, I was sitting, relaxing a little bit before dinner, and one of the ladies that I gotten to know set and we have a little place, a little library near the entrance to the building. And I was just sitting there relaxing. And she came over and she said, "Are you going to do anything else like that?" She said, "I've enjoyed your storytelling." And I said, "I don't know, possibly, And she said, "Well, I would love to be involved in something like that."
Oh.
And she's a lady who sings with us, and on Wednesday nights we have a group. I call it. We have an official name, the Melody Makers.
Mm-hmm.
I call it old people who like to sing. We have a few talented people in there. Terry being one of them, and Terry is our piano accompanist, and but we only have 3 men. So that's what I think. Old people who like to sing, that's what it is. But she is one of the talented singers in there. And I said, I'm gonna I'm gonna put that in my good memory because I was wondering if anybody else might have the bug. And she said, "Oh yeah, I would love to do that. I would, I did stuff in high school and I did, so that's great, you know." Um, and afterwards, thanks to my dear wife, um, we went down for dinner, and we went down to have dinner about 5:30. I got maybe 5:30, quarter of 6. Well, we did not leave the dining area until it was empty of all the tables were empty except for the one we were at, where we had about 12 to maybe 14, 15 people in and out. And Terry, after we finished our dinner, Terry walked around the place and said, "We can have wine in this place." In fact, they serve wine sometimes. Terry brought her box of wine down to the table, a brand new box of wine. Went around to the tables while people were still eating and stuff, and said, "We're having a party to celebrate the show." And so we wound up there until the place was dark, until they had cleaned up all the tables, until the lights were dimmed, because after supper at like I'm thinking like by 9 o'clock, if you go down to the main room, the atrium, it is this big room full of tables and chairs neatly set up for breakfast already, and it's dark because the staff has left, except for somebody who's at the concierge desk. And we had a great party. And this morning, I bumped into somebody. I had to run a quick errand downstairs and a lady that was at the party said, "Are we going to have another party?" I said, "If I do another show, we'll have another party." But it was so much fun because it was a spontaneous thing. It wasn't planned. I mean, it was Terry's idea, and it was so much fun. And um, I just am having such a good experience here, and in my last home. I know this is going to be the last place I live, and I'm so happy to have met really nice people, and um, people who enjoy different activities and stuff like that, and uh, people who like to share their stories. Um, and I don't have to be the one telling all the stories. In fact, I hear some really great stories from just lifetime stories from people. And we have people here of incredible backgrounds. Um, we have a number of doctors, retired doctors and stuff. Number of college professors, uh, and a couple of people who worked in the law and stuff like that, and both men and women who have had great careers, and it's just terrific.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great story, Stash. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wish I had been there to help you sell.
Well, I wouldn't wish that you lived there, because it is a home for senior living, and you're not ready for senior living yet. But
That's not what my husband says.
I know, and you know what Terry would say, and because this is what she was told by some friends, don't put it off, because we started talking about this, and we didn't put it off. Terry started talking about this last July, and in September we were driving across the country.
I know.
And I'm so happy she did, because we've met some people that have looked at the place. They have a lady here that shows prospective residents the place, and we have a one-bedroom apartment. It's very cozy, very nice, just right for us. And she has asked us, because Terry has decorated the apartment so nicely, that she said, she's gotten to know us well. When she has a prospective client, can she show them our apartment? and she has done that a number of times.
That's good.
And that's very nice, the way, so anyway, we've been encouraged people, and I've been the lady Shanda she likes me to stumble if I happen to meet her when she's showing people around. She likes it. She always says, "Boy, I'm glad to see you," because I tell them, "You're gonna love this place. You're gonna love it." I'm a good salesman for the place, So
Okay, I'm gonna switch gears.
Okay.
Okay, and will you at the very end ask your questions, okay? Because I'm going to be telling versions of this story, probably not the same version, but I want to know what else people.
Okay, good. And I will time it for you if you like.
Thank you.
You
So this is my recent adventure following on Stasha's theme. So Stash, you know I'm a gardener and I love spending time playing in the dirt, generally home in my flower and vegetable beds, sometimes with friends or in gardening classes. And I spent 3 days last week exploring a whole different world of playing in the dirt, this time in the cold and snow. Well, I am exaggerating a bit because most of the time I was indoors at the Marriott Washingtonian, the hotel in Gaithersburg. But I was there with 300 some other outdoor people, mostly farmers and people who work with or aspire to be farmers and gardeners and animal husbandry folks. So this event that I attended was the second annual conference of a group called the Care Farming Network. Care farming is a term used to describe therapeutic farming to promote health, well-being, and belonging. So I'm going to quote from the mission statement of the Care Farming Network. It says it connects established and aspiring care farms, fosters meaningful support, and builds awareness about the transformative power of care farming. This is a direct quote. We aim to cultivate a support community for care farmers, nurturing growth, resilience, and collaboration, unquote. Now, the Care Farming Network defines care farming as intentional integration of agricultural practice with therapeutic interventions to promote health, well-being, and belonging, as I've already said. Care farming itself offers purposeful, structured approaches where participants engage with nature or agricultural tasks within a supportive community. So care farms provide care and support to diverse populations, including those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. IDD was the abbreviation often heard at the conference, as well as armed forces veterans, trauma survivors, and people in recovery. So care farming has a history of social inclusion and community building. Frequent activities are growing vegetables, tending to animals, participating in group activities, nature-based vocational training that include opportunities to connect, contribute, and thrive. I love that word, thrive. Care farms are empowering environments focused on developing new skills, finding sense of purpose, and inclusion in a supportive community. These spaces, these care farms, create opportunities for hands-on learning, meaningful work, and memorable experiences. At the same time, they focus on reducing stress, promoting dignity, teamwork, personal growth, and developing a deep sense of health, well-being, and belonging. Now, many, perhaps most of the care farms engage in partnership research efforts with mental health organizations and universities that have consistently shown with data that therapeutic farming leads to measurable improvements in depression, grief, trauma, and social isolation. It's also one of the most innovating and empowering paths into agriculture for individuals who have for many, many, many years been excluded from these venues. So this week began for me and my crew, my daughter Rachel and her good friend Jenny, with a pre-conference tour and presentation at Main Street Inclusion, which was a wholly separate entity in Rockville, Maryland, very near Gaithersburg, just 10 minutes away, really, with a very different mission. Main Street Inclusion has a different mission, but it's an interesting overlap with their philosophy of inclusion and support. So driving the extra 10 minutes from the conference site there for breakfast at Main Street early Monday morning was a really good way to get to know 40 of our co-conference attendees before we hooked up with all 300 plus participants who attended the 3-day conference at the Marriott. Main Street Inclusion, where we started, is a community membership association that's open to anybody in this Rockville neighborhood, regardless of income or abilities, and includes regular activities like book groups, crafting workshops, discussion groups for health and wellness topics, regular field trips around the DC area, and an annual art show that raises a significant amount of money for the neighborhood and features both neighborhood artists and some big names that they recruit and fly in. All of this is housed in a 7-story apartment building in downtown Rockville, just a block or two from the main public library and some of Rockville's trendiest restaurants and coffee houses. Not all of them expensive. There were some really interesting places there. But the amazing part of the tour for me, and I heard similar things from others who attended, was learning about the apartment complex of 70 units over 7 floors that house more than 100 people. 70% of the residents pay significantly below market rates. And in addition, 30% of the spaces are reserved for residents with special needs. We spent 2 hours there and heard from the residents themselves, as well as a handful of staffers. So we had a pretty good introduction to the life and culture of this very integrated, in so many ways, vibrant community. We started out in the tiny cafe on the ground floor where we first met a half dozen residents who all wanted to talk to us and find out what we were doing there and tell us about their lives on those 7 floors of this building. And many fellow conference attenders who were there to get coffee and a very early pre-conference breakfast. Now, the cafe on the ground floor hires residents with special needs and actually runs another popular cafe in the next neighborhood over, and that's how they found this guy. He was already operating a community hub, and so they recruited him to do this shop as well. The tour group that I was with was universally impressed by the friendliness of the residents, including the ones who had just stopped by to get coffee and said, "We just live here." That's a quote. And work all over the DC area, including 1 or 2 who said they rarely attend the discussion groups or the arts programs or the health and wellness events because they said they were just too busy. But it was clear that the heart of the place is the community of enthusiasts who regularly engage in as many group activities as they can. Now, the tour was not directly related to the overall conference, the Care Farm conference, but it was an example of another form of self-care and community engagement for people who were too often left to fend for themselves in difficult situations. And the camaraderie there was palpable and really set the tone for the rest of the week at the conference itself. Once we got to the conference at the Marriott Washingtonian, one of the greatest gifts of the conference was the stories that I heard. There was one session devoted to storytelling by staff and farm workers, also called Care Farm volunteers or Care Farm clients, or sometimes just farm kids, depending on the focus of each environment. For all, there are all different age groups and different issues that are covered by these 300 plus farms all across the country. Now, there are 24 care farms in Maryland who are listed in the Care Farm Network directory. I was already familiar with two of them, Red Wiggler Farm, which was created by the founder and instigator of the Care Farm Network and of this conference. Red Wiggler is in Montgomery County, and they run a variety of programs for kids and adults. And they were very visible at the conference. That a lot of the volunteers were from Red Wiggler and a fair number of the staff. I mean, there were people working as volunteers and engaged in conference planning and development from all over the country. There were 7 people from one farm in Wisconsin alone. So it was really interesting to get to know all these different populations. But the other Maryland farm that I know a bit better is Fox Haven Farm outside the town of Jefferson in Frederick County. And I've been there a half dozen times, most often to be a guest storyteller in the historic renovated barn or in story workshops in the cozier and very picturesque restored dairy parlor building, a very old building all by itself. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I know about this Maryland farm, and then also share a bit about 2 or 3 Philadelphia care farms that I learned about from the conference. So Fox Haven, where I have actually spent time myself, does a lot of workshops. They are a not-for-profit. Most of the organizations in the network are not-for-profits, but not all of them. The founder was a woman named Harriet Crosby, who started the farm in 2001, or started the organization in 2001, which has 2 arms. There's an organic farm, which is an LLC and produces fruits and vegetables for sale and donation around the county and beyond. And then there's a not-for-profit learning center that produces herbs and mushrooms, fruits and nuts in an orchard, and apiary. All of these programs are run as educational programs with the emphasis on stewardship of the earth and the interdependence of all the people who work together on these projects. So there's no one person in any one enterprise. They're all connected. There's also an emphasis on what's called bushcraft, which I kind of knew a little bit about because I knew about foraging for wild foods. But bushcraft is actually much more intensive than that. There's firecraft, there's shelter building, water purification, navigation skills. And I've heard about all of those activities at Fox Haven, but I didn't really identify them as part of the long-term mission, which is developing a long-term comfort out in the wild and a deep respect for nature. The farm also produces honey, and the population that's specified in their grant writing and in their network membership is serving immigrants, refugees, individuals with autism and intellectual or developmental disabilities, people with mental health challenges, people who were impacted by the justice system. So in light of what's going on in our country these days, that seems like a very important part of the mission. They also serve veterans and people in recovery. Their activities include community-based arts, job skills training, and nature therapy, and their community sustainable agriculture project, their CSA, that invites people to join to become members of the CSA and receive fruits and vegetables and other produce like honey on a regular basis. They also have rental. There are 3 separate farmhouses on the property, and they use those as meeting houses, both to rent out and to hold special events. And I've been in several of those buildings, as well as the dairy parlor, when I've been working with story groups there. So I feel pretty close to that center. And I actually, to be honest, I didn't understand them at that group as a care farm. I thought of them as an environmental education center. So I was very pleasantly surprised to learn that Foxhaven was on the register of the Care Farm Network and was developing even more care activities and community-based activities than I had known about in the years that I worked with. And when I looked up a list of their partnerships on the network site, it's pretty amazing. The ARC of Washington County, the Frederick Asian American Center, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Frederick's Farm to School team that collects and develops and distributes locally grown produce to schools in Frederick County Libraries, Future Harvest Organization, Frederick Tourism Network, the Scott Key Disability Center, the Wild Herb Center, the Chesapeake Herb Shed Collective, that's a separate organization, the 10th Ward Distillery Company, which produces spirits, the University of Maryland Master Naturalists, and the University of Maryland Farm Internship Program that they work on research projects with them. The Common Market Food Co-op, where I go regularly to buy some of my food, and the Organic Valley Dairy Co-op. So all of that was news to me. Even though I knew the organization, I didn't know the details of their Care Farm program. And then I discovered several other Philadelphia care farms that, since I have a lot of connections in Philadelphia, having grown up there and still having good friends there, I am making plans to go and see some of these places. The first person I met as a vendor in the vendor's room, the swag room at the conference, was part of the Weird Friends Grow Club in Southwest Philadelphia, which is my old neighborhood. And this organization was founded by an African-American couple that call themselves the Weird Friends Grow Club, or that might even be what the kids named it. They have only 27 members, most of whom are youth and young adults. It was created as recently as April 2024. And they do a lot of craft projects, but they also do gardening and sell some of their produce. And their tagline is where hip hop meets urban farming. And I love that. So I did talk to the woman of that couple, Jerome Riles, and his wife, and she invited me to come and visit them. So we exchanged contact information, and I hope to get back to my old neighborhood sometime to see her in the not too distant future. And then I discovered the Philly Goat Project, the PGP, which is listed as the first city-based multi-service goat program in the United States, with teen job training, animal-assisted therapy, and wellness events for children and adults environmental and educational experiences, and community education projects. It's located at the Albury Arboretum, which I also know because that was the last neighborhood that my parents lived in when they moved into their requirement community. And the Philly Goat Project is open 365 days a year. If you want to interact with the animals, you need to make an appointment, but otherwise it's walk-in and you can come anytime from early in the day until, I think they're usually open until 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m., something like that. But they have programs going year round. They work with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including autism, and youth facing barriers. So issues like poverty and mental health issues and housing are all on their agenda. They are in the space bordered by Mount Airy, the neighborhoods of Mount Airy, East Germantown, and West Oak Lane, which is right where my parents were. That's the neighborhood that I got to know. I knew it a bit when I was in high school because I had friends there, but got to know it much better in the 10 years that my parents lived there. The Philly Goat Farm claims 45,000 visitors in 2024, 115 special events, 30 therapeutic events, 25 educational events, 60 community events, outreach to the community, and 28 teen interns. And that's not counting all of the people who visited and benefited in many other ways from that organization. And the very last place I wanted to mention is also Philadelphia, and it's located at the Navy Yard in Philly. And I was wondering, Stosh, if you had ever been to the Philadelphia Naval Yard. It's inner city Philadelphia, but right off Interstate 95. I think you can see it from Interstate 95. And they have an apiary there. This is the Mindful Beehive tour at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, but they are raising the bees there. They're training youth and adults to work with bees, and they're using it as a therapeutic apiary. They call it a therapeutic apiary in partnership with two universities. St. Joseph's and Temple University is collaborating on research with them to document the impact of therapeutic beekeeping on the local population. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that. They do yoga with the bees. They have craft classes with the bees. They do herb dyeing. They have beeswax candle crafting, but they're also working directly with bees and working on relaxation techniques with people who come in afraid of bees, but are willing to tackle that as a goal. Anyway, I had a wonderful, wonderful time at this conference. And I'm looking forward to learning more. Did I say there are about the same number of care farms listed in Pennsylvania as there are in Maryland, which was interesting to me because Pennsylvania is a agricultural state. And I mean, it's also an industrial state, but there are huge swaths of land that are dedicated to farms. But that's still a pretty high number compared to the rest of the country. So there's a big map. If you go to, I will give you the actual name of the website, make sure I get it right. carefarmingnetwork.org. You can look up your state, listeners. I haven't been to the West Virginia state listings or to the Utah state listings yet, but I'm looking forward to that. That's my story, Stash.
Well, that's very good. I enjoyed it. And no, I've never been to the Philadelphia. Um,
Bar?
was it? No, the
The Navy Yard.
Navy Arts. No,
Yeah.
I only time I've ever been to Philadelphia was to go to the um, Museum of the Science Museum,
Mm-hmm.
and I went there.
Franklin
I,
Institute.
the what?
Franklin Institute.
Yes, and I took kids there, which was nice. By the way, it was 25 minutes.
Wow. Okay, I
Yeah.
had no idea. That means we're out of time.
Yes. Yeah, I took kids there and we had a really nice time, a bus trip. And it was a nice place because there were so many things to see
Yeah, it's an amazing
and
museum.
stuff. But that was the only time I ever went out of state with a science kids.
That's a good
And
place to go.
and I didn't tell the principal where I was going. And after we came back the next day, he mentioned
words. Yeah.
he mentioned to me that he thought I should have asked permission to go out of state. And I said, well, I asked permission to go to a science museum in Philadelphia. And I thought it was a good joke. I said to him, I didn't think I had to educate anybody on where Philadelphia was. And he did not think that was funny.
Gosh, we are out of time, but I'm going to call you if you'll be available after this so I can ask you questions about both our stories. You've been listening to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stas Zielkowski.
And we're glad you were able to join us on the Enlighten Storytelling Hour as we encourage our listeners to share and produce more stories.
Right. And I will be here if you want to call.
Okay. Stay tuned for John Case next up.
All right.
Oh, it's Blues Day. Gonna be Blues Day. This time, from Australia, so you can expect it, but I don't know. But yeah, so we're having a good time on the radio today. Much as we can do.
Sounds good.
Anyway, I'm waiting for a report from the legislature about whether we're going to be assisting. Why are there more raids from ICE in West Virginia, which has one of the least percentages of immigrants of any state? Well, it turns out that, in rural areas, the number of demonstrators and resistance is going to be smaller, and the ability to not have any organized resistance. So why not go raid and do all this garbage, in places where there are not going to be as many witnesses? So
how did you learn that?
Actually, that was one of the Republican people who disagreed with this particular thing. He let the cat out of the bag,
Wow.
Turns out that, they want to use rural areas so their numbers don't look bad.
Mm-hmm.
We arrested 40,000, we arrested 1,000, we arrested 5, we did whatever, blah, 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 blah. And, but if they do it in Minneapolis, where they're apparently, I guess we'll see, been compelled to retreat at a pretty heavy cost.
I
don't know.
I think sooner or later, ICE is going to be the main object of the people who start the Civil War?
Well, I mean, I don't know. You know, I know we look back in history sometimes to look at patterns, and they are there, but
Because they're useless.
I don't know.
They're
Well,
not
yeah,
doing anything worthwhile, and they are obviously wrong. The way they're behaving, the way they're acting, masks, all that other stuff. Like sooner or later, some group is going to get tired of that stuff and going to start.
sure. Yeah. I mean, it's chaotic. But anyway, let me turn
Anyhow,
off the
okay. Well, good.